The riverbed smells like dust and old fish scales. I drag a stick through dirt, sketching a hull only I can see. The line wobbles. My pulse does too. Far-off dogs bark at nothing, or maybe at the same edge in the air that has my name on it. At the threshold, my wife folds a cloth, listening more than speaking. "Where do I put my hands?" she asks, setting a bowl on the shelf like it weighs a future. Bread cools on reed mats. The room feels like a held breath. I nod because words feel fragile. 3 sons, 3 tempers. Shem measures with his thumb and frowns. Ham wants to start before the plan is finished. Japheth circles the chalk line like it might bite. "Why this shape?" he asks. I show him the angle. He shows me my hesitation. Old Hiram's laugh finds me like a thrown pebble. "Build a barn upside down." "Noah," he says, palms up. A few neighbors collect at the lane's elbow drawn by the first rumor. I keep the stick moving. If I stop, I'll have to explain. I'm not ready to. The post hole bites into hardpan, stubborn as an old oath. I drive the iron and the earth shudders. The mallet's thud attracts stares the way a drum does. Thud thud, a beat you can count. Some people dance to mockery. I try to keep time with purpose. Pitch bubbles in the pot, sweet and acrid. I stir to test the thickness too thin, and it runs too thick, and it cracks. Heat licks my knuckles. The boys argue about ratios. "Work clean," I say, because the future hates leaks. They roll their eyes, then wipe the rim anyway. Sundown brings the kind of quiet that amplifies private doubts. I flex my palm. Blisters bloom like moons. My wife binds them with cloth and honey. She says nothing about the neighbors. I say nothing about my fear. We exchange silences like promises. Night brings counting. How many beams? How many days before weather forgets manners? I try to picture the finished thing, but the edges blur. Anxiety has a sound like a door that never fully latches. I hear it all night. Before dawn, the lane is blue and empty. I lay a chalk line across the long beam. Straight enough, I breathe slow until my hands obey. It's not courage I feel, more like obedience to a measurement I didn't invent but can follow. Roosters start bragging to each other. I lift the mallet, and the old ache in my shoulder answers. The wood accepts the first blow with a hollow sound that feels like agreement. Somewhere the rumor mill wakes up too. Let them. The work has chosen me back. A wind from the east finds the back of my neck. I look up at a sky that still looks harmless. That's the trick with danger. It looks ordinary until it doesn't. I whisper not to change anything, just to align. Make me steady. Then I swing again. Heat wobbles above the yard. I snap a chalk line and watch blue dust jump, outlining a curve that will one day keep water out. The beam lies stubborn and quiet, asking me if I believe in my own measurements. I lay the square again until belief and angle match. Shem sorts timbers by grain and straightness, humming a work song older than our house. He taps each piece with his knuckle, listening for true. "This one for ribs," he says, marking ends with charcoal. Order radiates from him like shade in midsummer. Ham wants speed. He shaves a board in bright, eager strokes, grinning when curls spill to his ankles. "We'll fix details later," he says. I touch the rough edge and shake my head. "Later leaks," I tell him. His grin falters, not in anger, just in learning. Japheth kneels in dust, sketching a joint I've never used. "If we notch deeper here, we save a peg," he says. I crouch beside him, tracing the stress line with my finger. "And we lose strength there," I answer. He squints, revises the drawing, curiosity, beating pride. The elder arrives, 2 men behind him. He studies the frame like a judge looks at a defendant. "Do not steal our harvest hands," he says. "We'll manage with our own," I answer. He points at the sky. It's blue. I point at the riverbank. So was it yesterday. We run low on long beams. I wheel a cart to the landing and meet a cedar seller with a fox's smile. His price galls. My need galls me more. I trade nails and cheese. The wood smells like travel and rain. I breathe it in like courage. We fit a test joint loaded with stones, and the beam screams a clean, ugly sound. The crack silences everyone. Ham kicks dirt. Shem kneels fingers the fibers, names the weak shoulder. We reset the jig. Pride sits out this round, while patience takes the tool. My wife builds a little city of care, water jars in shade bread, under cloth bandages ready. Eat, she orders. Math lies when you're hungry. I chew ashamed of how grateful my body feels. She smiles like a general who just won a battle nobody saw. Neighbors linger at the lane's elbow, tossing jokes like pebbles. Whale on stilts, one says. I keep planing. Mockery has a short attention span. Frames do not. When I pause, I hear something better than applause, the steady conversation of wood fitting wood. Lamplight turns the tablet gold. I redraw deck lines and add a duty roster, watches, tasks, rest. Plans are love letters to your future self. Outside fields cool. The yard exhale is long and tired. Under the quiet, the air holds a new vibration I can't name. Pitch pops like little mouths around the edge of the clay pot. I lift the stick and watch the thread stretch, then snap. The yard shimmers. Heat has weight today. I smell pine and something bitter, the way medicine smells before it saves you. We roll the plank. I lay the first thin wash along the seam wrist, steady, listening for the wood's thirst. Shem follows with the stronger coat, breath, slow movements like a scribe writing law. The plank drinks. The boat becomes less theory, more skin. Ham wants flood speed. He scoops a ladle big as a dare. Drown it, he grins. I tilt the pot back, slow bites, I say. He sighs, then shadows my strokes, learning restraint, the way a horse learns rein by the steadiness of the hand. Japheth wedges ribs, talking to the frame like it can be soothed. Easy, he murmurs to timber that has only known tree and storm. The wedges sing a dry note when seated right. He smiles. There's music in good pressure. A seam blisters. I scrape the bubble and find a hairline crack, thin as a lie. You tell yourself to save time. The fix costs an hour we don't have. We spend it anyway. Thunder flexes over the fields, not close, but nearer than morning. My wife brings water and honeyed linen. She binds the hot moons on my hands with the efficiency of a field medic. I need you tomorrow too, she says. I drink ashamed at how fast the cup empties. She refills it before I ask. The elder strolls by, face tilted away, like the smell might stick to his dignity. Tar doesn't make truth, he sniffs. No, I say, brushing, but it keeps lies from leaking. His mouth tightens. He moves on. The frame does not care. Gnats land on the gloss, trapped in a museum they didn't choose. A child at the lane points and laughs. I think of how many tiny annoyances get embalmed into every big effort, bugs in code grout specks in tile, and how the house stands anyway. Dusk folds the yard. We chalk tomorrow's grid on a plank, seams watches fire tending. Plans are the way you love your future self. Ham groans at the list. Shem nods. Japheth adds a note about wedge rotation. We pin it with a pebble. I collapse at the threshold, hands gritty with sand. The boat's skin cools to a trustworthy mat. I drift toward sleep, counting brush strokes. A single fat drop lands on my cheek. Not rain, not yet, just the rumor of weather. I open my eyes to listen. Mist burns off the river as a pair of deer steps from the reed, shadows, ears, turning like small sails. Breath threads the air. Their hooves whisper along our chalk line as if they've been here in dreams before. I lift a hand, and they split around me, gentle as a sentence. We uncoil ropes the color of old straw and lay lanes into the dirt. Shem drops stakes with a steady drum beat, thud, 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 teaching the morning a tempo. Left for small stock, I call right for heavy. The words work better than I expect. Some days a voice is a tool. Ham trots with a rope and 2 goats. Turn it into comedy, jerking him sideways like sailors grabbing a prank line. He skids, laughs, curses, recovers. I take the lead low and slow, and they follow because calm is a gravity. Ham grins, chastened and brighter. A lion arrives with the day in his mane. Everything near him changes, math goat sum to panic sheep, to silence a boy, to statue. I show both hands open a carpenter greeting a king. The lion's eyes pass over us like shade. He turns at the rope's hint and pads on. Birds thicken the sky until the hull wears moving shade. Doves settle like soft stones. Hawks carve letters in the blue. We slide open upper slats and the interior breathes. Feathers and dust mix in the light, a quiet storm we stand inside, without getting wet. At the lane's elbow, neighbors gather. Awe and mockery arm wrestle on their faces. A child tosses a fig to a donkey and squeals at the velvet-lipped precision. Someone mutters a blessing against madness. Someone else just counts, because counting feels like control when you have none. Inside the hold, we sort by temper and diet. Shem tallies on a clay shard, squares his jaw at the numbers. Japheth chalks arrows at junctions big bold mirrored, so even a stubborn cow can read them. Ham builds a quick gate from a door that wasn't using itself. The smell arrives like a country stamp in a passport indisputable. We shake ash and sand layer straw, lift slats to keep feet dry. My wife's voice runs logistics water, here feed there, hands washed in between. Order is kindness, she says, and the line moves faster. A porcupine freezes mid-waddle quills, whispering like brushes. Japheth guides it with a basket shield, held like a knight's. The creature sniffs, decides, waddles inside. We all exhale as if the smallest victory could hold back a sea. Sometimes it can. For a minute. Dusk paints the last pairs in copper. Their backs, their ears. The thin ropes trailing like lines of script. I rest my palm on the great door seam and feel its intention. The horizon keeps delivering. The village keeps watching. I ask the empty patch of path, who else is coming? Mist lifts, revealing a sky the color of a kept secret. I walk the hull and listen with my palm. The wood answers in thuds and quiets. Pens rustle awake behind me. The village hangs at the edge of the yard, like a rumor deciding whether to become news. We work the list. Shem tests a lashing and tightens it anyway. He marks a small X with charcoal his language for, you can trust this twice. Ham staggers under 2 crates and grins through the ache. Japheth tucks rope where his future hand will thank him for being thoughtful. My wife scrubs the threshold with a wet rag, then wipes her hands on her dress and smiles like she just closed a wound. Start clean, she says, and the phrase lands everywhere on decks on tempers, on the day itself. A goat sneezes and the boys laugh, then hush. Neighbors drift near in a jellyfish ring tentacles of talk, soft stings of doubt. A woman presses a string doll into my wife's palm and leaves her fingers there a second too long. For luck, she says. There's no luck here, only choices, but we say thank you anyway. The elder says nothing. His staff makes a small hole in dust, as if marking the place where a prayer might stand. His eyes are a ledger I can't balance. I nod in the language men use when they can't trade words without breaking something they'll need later. A young man I know by laughter steps forward. There's room, he says, testing. I look at the door and the math around it. There is order, I answer. He swallows hard and nods. Right choices often taste like failure to those who wanted a different mercy. We sweep our house like people leaving it to time. I straighten a stool that doesn't need straightening. My wife tucks herbs near the pens. Scent says safety to skittish hearts. She is triage and tenderness in one person, a hospital where everyone is admitted and no one turned away. I think of families taping windows before a hurricane of midnight apartment moves with boxes labeled now and later. The rituals help hands do what hearts can't yet agree to. I touch the door seam and imagine it already wet, as if preparing it might prepare me. The lever resists like a stubborn truth. Hinges groan in a bass note that vibrates my ribs. The opening narrows light compressing faces, becoming brushstrokes. Someone says my name with a softness that stings. My wife's palm finds my back, and the weight becomes ours instead of mine. The latch settles into itself, and the room learns a new sound, our inside breath, the hush of hooves on straw. Then a single tap above a knuckle on a table. Another. The animals listen, and so do we. Is this the start of saving, or the first measure of our grief? The roof becomes a drumskin. Rain ricochets off the boards, and the door seam ticks like a clock we didn't wind. The yard dissolves. I press my palm to tar, and feel the woods answer a deep tremor, then a steadier hum, like someone tuning a low note. We lift shockingly gentle after the groan. The hull frees itself with a scrape that flashes through my teeth. Straw slides. A goat bleats in righteous outrage. Water climbs the planks outside like a ladder no one asked for. I open a vent an inch and swallow storm. Shem moves in a loop check, tug check, his face carved into usefulness. He reties a knot I swore was fine, then sets his thumb to it and nods. Twice trusted, he mutters charcoal X already in his head. The boat seems to ease at his touch. Ham loses a duel with his stomach, then snatches the bucket back from gravity and keeps going. He grins a dare at the waves and staggers toward the slop hole. Again he says to no one, as if repetition is a friend. Sometimes it is. Japheth counts feed by rhythm, 2 heartbeats per scoop, so minutes can't mock him. He chalks a tally with wet fingers and the mark blurs. He redraws it with his breath held. "We'll need more order," he says. I point to the ledger stick. He nods like a soldier. A crate breaks loose and slides for the children's roll. Shem meets it with his shoulder gasps and pins it. We wedge lash, breathe, and those 3 steps bring the room back into balance. Relief cracks open, a laugh that tastes like lightning, turning into light. The pens speak panic in 50 dialects. My wife lights herbs. The smoke threads through straw and spine and lowers everything 1 notch. Her hand finds a flank, a forehead, a jaw. The animals press back like students listening to the teacher they finally trust. We invent a rhythm ash sand straw vent. Water feed rest watch. When the bucket line stalls, I swap in without comment, because captains who never lift things are just hats. The floor becomes a system, then a habit, then almost a comfort. A iwi goes early. We kneel on straw while thunder hammers the roof. My wife coaches breath with palm and voice. The lamb arrives wet hope in a hostile hour. It sneezes, blinks, and stands. The storm does not care. We care enough for both. On the 40th morning, gray light pours evenly through the slats. My ledger stick is a forest of notches. The rain lowers from roar to whisper. The animals sleep open instead of curled. We look at one another as if we've just remembered our names. How long now? Lamplight coughs into being. I notch the ledger stick another thin scar across wood and listen for the hull's reply. It ticks, then settles. Straw rustles like low applause. The day stands up from its knees and asks us to carry it without dropping the corners. Shem measures rations with a scoop that kisses the line. Ham hovers stomach louder than pride. I miscounted my hunger, he grins. Shem points to the ledger jaw set. Before we can choose sides, my wife says extra ladle, extra latrine. Peace returns, smelling faintly of compromise. A seam sweats black. I scrape the shine until honesty shows, then paint in patience, thin wash, then thicker coat. Japheth taps a brace home, listening for the note that says enough. The boat exhales through the slats. The smell pine smoke medicine becomes its own benediction. Night cough in the U-pen. Panic drafts through bodies. My wife crushes, herbs murmurs, slips paste under a rough tongue. We wait counting breaths like coins. Toward dawn, the cough loosens. Relief walks the aisle in bare feet. We pretend not to cry by being very busy. Haircuts on a crate. Shem turns us toward the light and works with calm hands. Clippings fall like small storms, stick to sweat, drift to corners. Ham mourns a curl, then admires his lighter head. Aerodynamic, Japheth says, and we laugh at something that isn't survival. I pace the night watch, naming darknesses so they don't name me first. The boat answers each step with a sound I've learned to trust. Somewhere outside, the ocean keeps an appointment with the moon. Inside, we keep one with each other. A sack splits grain, halos the floor. Ham swears. Japheth kneels and scoops with his sleeves. Sweep, not weep, Shem says, deadpan. It becomes a joke that survives until breakfast. We save most of it. We save the joke entirely. Stories after feeding. I talk about crews you'll never meet, submarines, orbital labs, and how they stitch days together with checklists and inside jokes. The boys carve small animals from scrap. Tiny wooden ears and tails line a beam like witnesses. A breeze arrives with a rumor of elsewhere. I pause at the vent and let it touch my face. It tastes like someone rinsed the world. The animals shift from curled to open. For a moment, quiet doesn't feel like absence. It feels like a door. I find the notch stick and press my thumb along its teeth. Tomorrow we ask a question, I say. The boys look up. They know which kind winged stubborn black as the idea of quitting. We sleep with that question perched on the rim of our thoughts. The vent gives us a new taste of air, less salt, more green, like crushed stems. I hold the smell in my mouth the way you hold a name you're not ready to say. Today, we ask, I tell the boys. The hull creaks as if eavesdropping. Shem lifts the raven from the crate. It watches him with a scientist's patience. Ham slides the slat. The wind shoulders in. Japheth ties a tiny thread to the bird's leg, not a leash, a note. I set the weight on my arm and feel intelligence alert and unsentimental. Find edge, I murmur. It launches a line of ink across gray paper. For a moment, we are all necks and eyes. The bird finds a pattern in the gusts and disappears into the file cabinet of distance. Shem says it's working the problem. We pretend that is enough. Waiting is a weather system. Ham attacks chores like a sprinter. Japheth draws current guesses on a plank pointing at invisible ridgelines. My wife warms water. She knows which tasks hold the room together when the clock tries to pull it apart. I write nothing on the ledger. Absence is not a number. Evening builds its dark from the edges inward. The raven remains a rumor stitched to the horizon. Maybe it found ground. Ham says turning hope into grammar. I nod because doubt needs kindness too. The hull sings low, a sound like a hand on a shoulder saying hold. 7 mornings. The air tastes like market greens. We lift a dove, dense and delicate. Japheth loosens the thread. Shem opens the slat with small ceremony. The bird shoots out, white punctuation in gray. My wrist feels instantly lighter and somehow riskier. We work the loops, feed, clean, check, rest, and obedience that keeps hope from fermenting into chaos. I think of tracking pages that refuse to update hospital labs that say processing, and how the only honest answer is to keep the floor clean and the breathing steady. Near dusk, a shadow flickers at the slats. The dove arrives on my wrist with a thud of relief and carries a green comma shaped like a leaf. Olive. Veins, wet stem bitten clean. For a second, I think I must have dreamed it, and then everyone is making sound. The pens talk joy in 50 dialects. My wife laughs in a key that unlocks something in my ribs. Shem relaxes 1 notch you wouldn't notice unless you live with him. Ham whoops. Japheth lifts the leaf eyes wide as if reading a letter written to us from land. We do not rush. I lay the leaf in a shallow bowl of water as if baptizing evidence. We close the slat. Tomorrow has a shape now, and that shape asks for patience. I scratch a single word on the shard soon and let it sit there like a small fire. Night returns with its quiet practice. I line the boys' sleeping mats, tuck the shard under my palm, and listen to the hull hum. Somewhere in the distance a boundary has moved. Inside, we move a notch too, but gently so the hope cures evenly. The hull stops traveling. It settles wood, speaking quietly to stone. I open the slat, and cold air pushes in tasting of wet rock and old lichen. We all lean the same direction as if listening could anchor us. Today, I say not loud, we touch ground. The ramp lowers and kisses earth. Mud takes my first step like a promise with conditions. Ham charges and promptly slides, arms windmilling. Shem catches him, and both wear matching stripes of mountain. Japheth pokes the slope with a staff, drawing a dotted line of safe places for feet. Animals calculate. A donkey tests, shifts, commits. Goats treat the ramp like a dare and win. The lion descends as if the ground has been waiting for him personally. Birds go vertical, then circle back, writing a quick essay in the air about wind shear and altitude. We read our boat like a patient after surgery. A spar cracked but useful. A seam asking for a thin wash. Rope glazed smooth from faithful friction. I note each thing on a shard. Repairs are not shame. They are gratitude for what held when it had to. My wife finds water talking to rock. A slow thread, clear as a note. She cups it into a clay bowl and sets a fire under another pot. Boil first, she says, her voice, the recipe for staying. Steam rises. We all relax a notch you can't see. We lay out a rectangle for shelter with stakes and string. It isn't battle against weather. It's a rehearsal for belonging. Canvas will come. For now, edges help hearts. Shem measures. Ham hauls. Japheth ties a knot you can trust with sleep. The space becomes our. We step to the ridge and see a seam of valleys stitched with fog. Rocks like old teeth, scrub gripping cracks, sky trying for blue. I feel joy and grief shake hands in my chest. We made it. We lost them. The wind knows both names and says them. A porcupine waddles down the ramp, pauses, and decides the mountain is acceptable. The boys cheer like a victory in miniature. Small creatures make the best diplomats between worlds. The Ark watches, wooden and enormous, like a retired giant politely pretending to be furniture. I lift a stone, uncut honest, and lay it by the door. Not an altar yet. A memory placeholder. Shem adds one quietly. Ham two loudly. Japheth turns three into a stack that looks like a question mark. We smile because questions are a kind of faith. Evening thins the mist to threads. Mud cracks into maps on our shins. We eat simple and listen to the ridge learn our names. The Ark behind us is less a ship now, more a house that's told a story. Tomorrow we climb down. Tonight we memorize the stillness. We rebuild a small square with uncut stones. Nothing fancy, just honest weight on honest ground. Kindling snaps. Spark becomes thread. Smoke lifts like a quiet message. The air smells of cedar and wet rock. I breathe with my hands on my knees and let gratitude arrive without speech. Shem checks the circle for true and nods when it closes neatly. Ham argues for bread before work. Japheth points at a sketch terraces, cistern field borders. My wife holds her palms to the new fire warming the day's joints. We disagree softly and find we like how that feels. We carry a portion from the store like guests showing up early to help set tables. Not payment participation. Smoke thickens, sweet sharp, and I think of memorials after hurricanes where people promise to do stairs by daylight and keep batteries where they're reachable. Promises mean logistics. Wind turns, and color slides into sky. Not loud, not shy. A bow laid gently across cloud and ridge. The animals still themselves as if a hand touched the room. The boys stop mid-thought the way men do when something bigger asks them to listen. I say we live like people with a second draft, and the words sit in the air and refuse to leave. That means ash buckets beside every hearth. It means water rules and dignity rules and the kind of boundaries you set when life is on loan, not owned. We assign first labor the way a council sets ordinances water to Shem, fields to Japheth, shelter frames to Ham, who needs celebration to last longer than a song. My wife writes a meal rota on pottery. She knows hunger ruins charters faster than neglect. I scratch a brief charter on clay, what we owe creatures soil one another. No poetry clarity. Later a storm will test it. Storms are examiners who don't take bribes. For now, the words dry in sunlight, and I feel something like governance settle in my ribs. We shoulder frames and raise a first canvas. The wind tries to teach it kite tricks. We insist on house manners. Ropes behave. Knots hold laughter, gets permission to sound bigger than we are. A camp becomes a village in the space between two good knots. At the stones again, smoke soft as shawl heat, like a steady hand. My wife sets herbs and bread near the warmth, not sacrifice hospitality. The colors hold over the ridge as if pinned by a larger will. I want to bow. Instead, I set another stone. Dusk cools the fog into threads. The Ark crouches behind us, retired, but still listening. I lay my palm on its flank, thank you, and face tents terraces tomorrow. The sky writes please and don't forget in light. We nod, then ask our quiet question. Can we be faithful in fair weather? Before the screen fades, pause for a beat. If the storm hit tomorrow, what planks are you building into your ark today? Honesty, discipline, forgiveness, or a long overdue apology? Who would you bring on board, and where have you seen a rainbow? A kept promise, show up in your life. Share your rain and rainbow moment in the comments. Your story might be the lifeline someone else needs.